Her lawyer slid the final buyout agreement across the conference table. Veronica's signature was already there. Perfect cursive. Confident. Victorious. All I had to do was sign my name on the line, accept my $30,000 settlement, and walk away from the company I'd spent 12 years building. Veronica was smiling. That perfectly practiced smile she used on clients and investors. The one that said, "I'm doing you a favor." "Sign it, Maya," she said. "Let's end this professionally." So I signed. I watched her face as I wrote my name. Watched the relief flood her features. Watched her exchange a look with her lawyer. They thought I'd given up. They thought I was broken. They had no idea that by pushing me out, by forcing me to sell my shares, they'd just handed me the single best payday of my entire life. And Veronica, my former best friend, my business partner of 12 years, had just bought herself a ticking time bomb for $2.4 million. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Because you need to understand how I built something from nothing. How Veronica stole it. And how she destroyed herself trying to own what was never really hers. My name is Maya Reeves. I'm 37 years old. And until 6 months ago, I was the co-founder and chief operations officer of Lumina Cosmetics. You've probably heard of us. We're the brand that went viral 3 years ago. The clean beauty company with the minimalist packaging. The one celebrities posted about on Instagram. The company that made Veronica Chin a multi-millionaire. Veronica gets all the credit now. Forbes called her the beauty disruptor. Business Insider named her one of the top 30 under 40. She's the face of Lumina. The visionary founder. The woman who built an empire. What nobody knows is that I built it first. I met Veronica 12 years ago. I was 25. Working as a quality control manager at a cosmetics manufacturing plant in New Jersey. $65,000 a year. Decent benefits. The kind of stable job your parents want you to keep forever. But I had a side project. I'd been obsessed with skincare since I was a teenager. Not makeup. Skin health. Understanding what actually worked versus what was just marketing. I'd spent years researching ingredients, reading clinical studies, testing formulations on myself. And I'd created something. A serum. Simple formula. 6 ingredients. No fragrance. No fillers. Just active compounds that actually did what they promised. I made it in my kitchen. Bottled it in generic containers. Gave it to friends to try. Within 3 months, people were asking where they could buy it. That's when I met Veronica. She was a friend of a friend. Recent MBA graduate. Working at a consulting firm. Smart. Ambitious. Connected. We met for coffee. I showed her my formulation notes. Told her about the demand. She saw something I didn't see yet. Not just a product. A brand. We became partners 2 weeks later. My formulations. Her business expertise. 50-50 ownership. Equal partners. Best friends building something together. The first 2 years were brutal. We maxed out credit cards. Borrowed money from family. Worked full-time jobs while building Lumina on nights and weekends. I handled everything operational. Manufacturing relationships. Ingredient sourcing. Quality control. Formulation development. Veronica handled everything external. Branding. Marketing. Investor pitches. Social media. We complemented each other perfectly. Or so I thought. By year 3, we had real revenue. $500,000 in sales. By year 5, we'd hit $2 million. By year 8, we were doing $12 million annually. And by year 10, Lumina Cosmetics was a household name. $38 million in revenue. Stocked in Sephora, Ulta, and Nordstrom. We'd made it. We were living the entrepreneur dream. Except somewhere along the way, things had shifted. It started small. Veronica began making decisions without consulting me. Hiring people. Approving campaigns. Changing product directions. When I'd ask why she didn't include me, she'd say, "You're so busy with operations." I didn't want to bother you. Then came the titles. In interviews, she'd introduce herself as founder and CEO. Not co-founder. Just founder. As if I didn't exist. When I confronted her about it, she apologized. "It's just simpler for press," she said. You know I value you. This is your company too. But the pattern continued. Forbes article, Veronica Chen, founder of Lumina. Business Insider profile, how Veronica Chen built a beauty empire. TechCrunch feature, Veronica Chen on disrupting the cosmetics industry. My name appeared once. In the third paragraph, Chen credits her operations manager, Maya Reeves, with maintaining production quality. Operations manager. Not co-founder. Not partner. Operations manager. Like I was an employee she'd hired. The real problem started 18 months ago. Veronica wanted to raise venture capital. Scale aggressively. Expand internationally. I wanted to grow sustainably. Maintain quality. Protect our margins. We'd built this company bootstrapped. We owned it completely. No investors. No debt. No one to answer to. Why give that up? I asked during one of our increasingly tense board meetings. Because that's how you build a unicorn, Veronica said. That's how you become a real company. We are a real company. We're profitable. We're growing. We're stagnant, she snapped. You're afraid of risk. You've always been afraid. That was the first time she said it out loud. The thing she'd been thinking for years. That I was holding her back. She brought in investors anyway. Without my approval. Series of funding. $10 million. Valuation of $60 million. The deal gave investors 30% of the company, which meant Veronica and I each went from 50% ownership to 35%. I'd lost 15% of my company without agreeing to it. How did you do this without my signature? I demanded. She slid the operating agreement across the table. Article 7, Section 3. Either partner can execute financing agreements under $10 million without unanimous consent. I stared at the document. I'd signed it 12 years ago. Back when we were working out of my apartment. Back when $10 million was an impossible number. I never imagined she'd use it against me. She smiled. Not the warm smile I remembered from our early days. Something colder. Welcome to the big leagues, Maya. The investors changed everything. Suddenly, Veronica had board seats to fill. Advisors to consult. Quarterly targets to hit. And I was in the way. She started excluding me from meetings. Hired a new chief operating officer without telling me. Said it would free me up to focus on product development. Translation: I was being pushed out of operations. The thing I'd built. The thing I was best at. I tried to fight back. I scheduled meetings. Demanded transparency. Insisted on being included. Veronica's response was always the same. You're being emotional. You're not thinking strategically. You need to trust me. The investors backed her. Every single one. Because Veronica was the face of the company. The visionary. The media darling. I was just the person who made the products. And in venture capital's eyes, product people are replaceable. 6 months ago, everything came to a head. Veronica called an emergency board meeting. Just her, me, and the 3 investor board members. She had a proposal. Maya, she began, her tone careful and practiced. We've been growing apart strategically for a while now. I think it's best for the company if we restructure our partnership. Restructure how? She slid a document across the table. I'm offering to buy out your shares. Full market value based on our last valuation. You'd walk away with $2.4 million. I stared at the number. $2.4 million. It sounded like a lot. But I knew the math. 35% of a $60 million company was $21 million. She was offering me 11% of what my shares were actually worth. This is insulting. It's generous, one of the investors said. Given current market conditions. Given that you've been pushing me out for 18 months, I corrected. Veronica's expression didn't change. You're not happy here, Maya. You haven't been for a long time. This is an opportunity for both of us to move forward. What if I say no? Then we continue as partners. She paused. But I should tell you, the board has voted to bring in a new CEO. Someone with scaling experience. I looked around the table. 3 investors. All nodding. Veronica. Perfectly composed. I was outnumbered. Who's the new CEO? I asked. Veronica smiled. Me. The board wants to formalize my role. So, let me get this straight. You've been erasing me from the company history. Pushing me out of operations. And now you're offering to buy me out for a fraction of what I'm owed. Or I can stay and watch you run the company I built. That's one way to look at it, Veronica said coolly. Or you can see this as a generous exit from a partnership that's no longer working. I hired a lawyer. Patricia Moon. 58 years old. 30 years of corporate law experience. The kind of attorney who charges $800 an hour and earns every penny. She reviewed the operating agreement, the board votes, the buyout offer. Then she looked at me. Legally, she can do this. The investor agreements give her board control. The operating agreement allows majority shareholders to force a buyout in cases of irreconcilable differences. So I have no choice? You have choices. She leaned back. You can fight. We could tie this up in court for years. Cost you hundreds of thousands in legal fees. Maybe win, maybe lose. Or you can take the buyout. $2.4 million. Walk away. That's not fair. Patricia gave me a look that said she'd heard that word 1,000 times in conference rooms just like this one. Fair doesn't matter. Legal matters. Before we continue, please subscribe to Family Secret TV and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I see everything and your support means the world to me. Thank you. I spent 2 weeks agonizing over the decision. My family told me to take the money and run. My friends told me to fight. My accountant told me $2.4 million was life-changing money. More than most people see in a lifetime. But it wasn't about the money. It was about 12 years of my life. 12 years of building something from nothing. 12 years of being erased, dismissed, and pushed aside. And then, 3 days before I was supposed to respond to the buyout offer, I discovered something. Something Veronica had no idea I knew. Something that changed everything. I was cleaning out my home office, sorting through old files, preparing mentally to walk away. And I found a folder, one I'd forgotten about, from 2019, 4 years ago, right before Lumina really took off. Inside was a contract, a manufacturing agreement with Chin Laboratories. Chin Laboratories was owned by Veronica's uncle, David Chin. He ran a contract manufacturing facility in South Korea. 4 years ago, Veronica had suggested we move some of our production there. Save costs. Increase capacity. I'd reviewed the contract. The terms looked standard. I'd signed off on it. What I'd forgotten, what I hadn't thought about in 4 years, was a clause buried on page 7. Intellectual property ownership. All formulations manufactured by Chin Laboratories remain the property of Chin Laboratories unless otherwise specified in writing. I read it 3 times. Then I pulled up our current product catalog. 80% of our products were manufactured at Chin Laboratories, including our hero product, the serum I'd invented in my kitchen 12 years ago, the product that built this company. According to this contract, Chin Laboratories owned the formulations, which meant Veronica's uncle owned our intellectual property, which meant Lumina didn't actually own its own products. I sat in my home office until 3 in the morning, cross-referencing contracts, checking production records, verifying dates. The picture that emerged was devastating. Veronica had moved production to her uncle's facility 4 years ago. She'd signed a contract that transferred our IP to his company, and she'd never corrected it. Either she didn't notice the clause, which seemed impossible for someone as detail-oriented as Veronica, or she did notice, and she'd been sitting on a time bomb for 4 years. Every product we sold, every formulation I'd created, every patent we thought we owned, legally belonged to David Chin. Not Lumina. Not Veronica. David Chin. I called Patricia Moon at 7 in the morning. I need you to review something. I sent her the contract. Walked her through the production history. She called back 2 hours later. Maya, she said slowly. Do you understand what this means? Tell me I'm wrong. You're not wrong. She paused. If this contract is valid and if no subsequent amendment was filed, then Chin Laboratories owns the intellectual property for approximately 78% of Lumina's product line. Which means Lumina is selling products it doesn't legally own the rights to produce. I closed my eyes. What happens if someone enforces that contract? Patricia's voice was careful. Best case scenario, Lumina would have to negotiate a licensing agreement with Chin Laboratories. Pay royalties on every product sold. Worst case? Chin Laboratories could cease production immediately. File for injunctive relief. Prevent Lumina from manufacturing or selling any of those products. And Veronica doesn't know? If she knew, she would have fixed it years ago. This is a company-ending liability. I sat with that information for a long moment. If I sign the buyout agreement, I asked slowly, and this contract gets enforced after I leave, what happens to my payout? Patricia understood immediately. The buyout is contingent on the shares retaining their current value. If the company's value collapses due to undisclosed liabilities after the sale, you could potentially argue fraud. She paused. But more importantly, if you're not a shareholder when this liability surfaces, it's not your problem. Meaning? Meaning Veronica would own 100% of a company that doesn't own its own products. I had a choice to make. I could tell Veronica about the contract. Warn her. Save the company we'd built together. Or I could sign the buyout. Take my $2.4 million. And let her discover the problem herself. Some people would call that revenge. I called it consequences. Veronica had spent 18 months pushing me out, erasing my contributions, forcing me to sell. She wanted me gone. So I'd leave. And I'd take my knowledge with me. I signed the buyout agreement 3 days later. Same conference room. Same table. Same lawyer. But this time, I was the one smiling. Veronica looked relieved. I'm glad we could resolve this professionally, she said. Me too. The money will transfer within 48 hours. Perfect. She extended her hand. Thank you for everything, Maya. You helped build something really special. I shook her hand. You're going to do amazing things with Lumina. I know it. And I meant it. She was going to do amazing things. She just had no idea what those things would cost her. The money hit my account 2 days later. $2,400,000. After taxes, I'd walk away with about $1.7 million. More money than I'd ever imagined having. But I didn't celebrate. I didn't post on social media. Didn't throw a party. Didn't buy anything expensive. I just waited. Because I knew what was coming. And I knew exactly when it would arrive. Chin Laboratories' contract with Lumina was set to renew in 6 months. Standard manufacturing agreement. Automatic renewal unless either party gave 90 days notice. But buried in the renewal clause was something interesting. Upon renewal, all IP ownership terms would be reviewed and formalized in writing. Meaning in 6 months, someone at Chin Laboratories would actually read the IP clause. And they'd realize they owned the formulations for a company now valued at over $100 million. I'd done the math. If they demanded fair market licensing fees, Lumina would owe approximately 30% of revenue. Retroactive for 4 years. That would be about $40 million. Plus ongoing royalties. Plus legal fees if they decided to sue. Veronica had bought 100% of a company that was about to discover it owed more than it was worth. And the best part? She'd been so eager to push me out that she never asked why I signed so easily. She never wondered why I stopped fighting. She never questioned why I walked away from $21 million for $2.4. She thought I was weak. She thought I'd given up. She had no idea I was saving myself from the sinking ship. I didn't have to wait 6 months. Chin Laboratories figured it out in 3. I was having coffee with an old friend from the manufacturing industry when my phone lit up. Text from Patricia Moon. Veronica's lawyer just called. Chin Labs filed a cease and desist. They're claiming IP ownership. Wants to know if you knew about this. I stared at the message. Then I typed back, I discovered it after I signed the buyout. Not my problem anymore. Patricia's response was immediate, brilliant. The news broke 2 days later. TechCrunch, Lumina Cosmetics faces major IP dispute with manufacturing partner. Forbes, beauty darling Veronica Chin embroiled in ownership battle. Business Insider, sources say Lumina may owe millions in licensing fees. The articles were devastating. Chin Laboratories claimed ownership of 78% of Lumina's product formulations. They had the contracts to prove it. They were demanding $42 million in retroactive licensing fees. And they'd filed for an injunction preventing Lumina from manufacturing or selling any disputed products until ownership was resolved. Lumina's revenue would drop by 80% overnight. The company Veronica had valued at 100 million was now functionally worthless. Veronica called me. I didn't answer. She called again. And again. Finally, she sent a text. Maya, please call me. This is important. I waited 2 hours. Then I called back. Hi, Veronica. What's going on? Her voice was shaking. Did you know about the Chin Labs contract? I was quiet for a moment. I discovered it after I signed the buyout. Why didn't you tell me? Because you'd just spent 18 months pushing me out of my own company. I kept my voice calm. You didn't want my input. Remember? Silence on the other end. Maya, please. This is serious. The company is going to collapse. I need your help. I wish I could help. But I'm not a shareholder anymore. This is your company now. Just like you wanted. I could hear her breathing. You knew, she said. You knew, and you didn't tell me. I knew after I signed. And yes, I didn't tell you. I paused. Because you made it very clear my opinions weren't valuable. This is different. This is. Veronica, I said gently. You got exactly what you wanted. You pushed me out. You bought my shares. You own 100% of Lumina now. Congratulations. I hung up. She didn't call back. The collapse happened faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks, Sephora pulled Lumina products from shelves pending resolution of the IP dispute. Ulta followed. Nordstrom followed. Investors started calling Veronica demanding answers. How did you not know about this clause? Why wasn't this caught in due diligence? Who reviewed these contracts? The answer to that last question was, me. I'd reviewed them 4 years ago. I'd signed off on them. But I wasn't there anymore. And the person who'd pushed me out was now solely responsible for the disaster. Within a month, Veronica was trying to negotiate with Chin Laboratories. They wanted $50 million. Not 42. 50. They'd raised the price. Because they could. Veronica tried to fight it in court. Chin Labs had ironclad contracts. Signed by both parties. Crystal clear language. The judge ruled in their favor. Lumina owed $50 million. Plus legal fees. Plus ongoing royalties of 35% on any future sales. The company that had been worth 100 million was now worth less than zero. Veronica's investors sued her. For negligence. For failing to disclose material liabilities. For misrepresenting the company's value. They wanted their $10 million back. Plus damages. Veronica's personal assets were on the line. Her house. Her cars. Her savings. Everything. The woman who'd built an empire on my formulations was about to lose it all. And the woman she'd pushed out was sitting on $1.7 million in completely protected, already taxed, untouchable cash. If you've made it this far, you know exactly what's coming. Hit that like button if you think Veronica got what she deserved. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because I've got more stories where this came from. Now, let's finish this. The final board meeting happened 6 months after I signed the buyout. I wasn't invited. But Patricia was copied on the investor lawsuit documents. And she forwarded them to me. The meeting minutes were fascinating. Veronica tried to blame me. Maya signed off on the Chin Labs contract, she told the board. She should have caught this clause. This is her fault. One of the investors, the same one who'd pushed for my buyout, had a question. When did Maya review this contract? 2019. And when did you become sole CEO? 18 months ago. So you've been running the company for 18 months. And in that time, you never reviewed your manufacturing agreements? Silence. The investor continued. You pushed out your co-founder, the person who handled all operations, and then you never bothered to review the contracts she'd signed 4 years ago? More silence. This isn't Maya's fault, the investor said. This is yours. Veronica tried one more desperate move. She called me 3 months after the board meeting. I answered this time. Curious what she'd say. Maya, her voice was different. Smaller. I need to ask you something. Okay. When did you find out about the IP clause? I told her the truth. 3 days before I signed the buyout. And you didn't think to tell me? I considered it. I paused. But then I remembered how you'd spent 18 months erasing me. Pushing me out. Calling me emotional and unstrategic. She was quiet. You wanted me gone, Veronica. So I left. I just took my knowledge with me. That's not fair. I almost laughed. You offered me $2.4 million for shares worth $21 million. You told me I was holding you back. You rewrote our company history to erase my contributions. I kept my voice calm. And now you want to talk about fair? Maya, please. Please what? Please save you from the consequences of your own decisions? I'm going to lose everything. I know. How can you just? I stopped her. Veronica, you made a choice. You chose to push me out without understanding what I actually did. You chose to run a company you didn't fully understand. You chose to ignore the operational details because you were too busy being the face of the brand. I paused. Those were your choices. This is your consequence. I hung up. That was the last time we spoke. Lumina filed for bankruptcy 8 months after I signed the buyout. The investors got nothing. Veronica lost everything. Her house. Her savings. Her reputation. Chin Laboratories bought the company's assets for $3 million. They now own a beauty brand built on my formulations. And they're making a fortune. As for me, I took my $1.7 million and started over. Built a new company. Smaller this time. Completely independent. No partners. No investors. No one to push me out. I own 100%. I manufacture everything myself. In a facility I control. With contracts I write. And I learned something important. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting back. Sometimes it's just knowing when to let someone destroy themselves. Veronica's last Instagram post was 6 months ago. A long caption about resilience and lessons learned and starting over. She's working as a consultant now. Helping other startups. Giving advice about scaling and growth. The comments are mostly supportive. But if you scroll down far enough, you'll find one comment that stands out. From an account with no profile picture. Just a username. It says, "Maybe next time, value the people who built it with you." I didn't write it. But I thought it. A year after the bankruptcy, I got an email. From David Chin. Veronica's uncle. The owner of Chin Laboratories. He wanted to meet. We met at a coffee shop in Manhattan. He was in his 60s. Polite. Businesslike. "Miss Reeves," he said. "I wanted to thank you." For what? For creating formulations that built my company's value by $40 million. He smiled. "I also wanted to offer you something." I waited. Chin Labs is expanding. We're launching our own beauty brand. We'd like to hire you as Chief Product Officer. Name your salary. I looked at this man who'd profited from the collapse of the company I'd built. This man who now owned everything I'd created. "How much are you offering?" $350,000 a year. Plus equity. Plus bonuses. It was a fortune. But it wasn't mine. "I appreciate the offer," I said. "But I'm building my own company now." He nodded slowly. Smart. He stood to leave. "If you ever change your mind, the offer stands." He walked away. And I sat there drinking my coffee, thinking about how different my life had become. A year ago, I was being pushed out of my own company. Now I was turning down offers worth millions. Because I finally understood something Veronica never did. It's not about being the biggest. It's about owning what you build. My new company is called Meridian. We launched 6 months ago. We do about $2 million a year in revenue. Nothing compared to what Lumina was. But it's mine. Every formulation. Every decision. Every dollar. Mine. I work from a small office in Brooklyn. I have 4 employees. We manufacture everything in New Jersey. It's small. It's sustainable. It's completely under my control. And nobody can take it from me. Last month, I got a LinkedIn message from one of Lumina's old investors. The one who'd pushed hardest for my buyout. He wanted to apologize. Said he'd made a mistake. Said he should have listened to me. Said he'd underestimated me. I read the message twice. Then I deleted it. Some apologies come too late to matter. Some lessons are only learned through loss. If you're watching this and you've ever been pushed out, underestimated, or erased from something you built, I want you to know something. Your value doesn't disappear just because someone stops seeing it. Your contributions don't become less real just because someone else takes credit. And sometimes, the best thing you can do is walk away. Not because you're weak, but but because you're smart enough to know when a ship is sinking, and brave enough to build a new one. Veronica wanted to build a unicorn. She wanted to be famous, featured in Forbes, recognized as a visionary. She got what she wanted. She became famous, just not the way she planned. She's now known as the CEO who destroyed a $100 million company because she pushed out the person who actually understood how it worked. Her Wikipedia page has a section called Downfall. Mine doesn't exist yet, but my company does. And that's enough. I ran into Veronica once, about 3 months ago, at a coffee shop in Soho. She was with a client, consulting work. Our eyes met across the room. She looked older, tired. The confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked like regret. I could have ignored her, could have walked past without acknowledging her, but I didn't. I walked over. "Hi, Veronica." She stood up quickly. Too quickly. "Maya." "Hi. How are you?" "Good. Really good, actually. Meridian just hit a milestone. We're expanding production." That's great." Her voice was hollow. "I'm happy for you." "Thank you." We stood there for a moment. All the words unsaid between us. All the years. All the betrayal. I wanted to say something cutting. Something that would make her feel what I'd felt when she pushed me out. But looking at her, at what she'd become, I realized I didn't need to. She was already living with the consequences. "Take care, Veronica." I walked away. I didn't look back. Some people ask me if I feel guilty for not warning her about the IP clause, for letting her buy me out knowing what was coming, for watching her company collapse. The answer is no. Not even a little. Because here's the truth. Veronica didn't lose everything because of a contract clause. She lost everything because she valued control over collaboration. She lost everything because she erased the person who built the foundation. She lost everything because she thought being the face of the company was more important than understanding how it actually worked. The IP clause was just the match. But she built the house of cards herself. My grandmother used to say something I didn't understand until now. People who build empires on other people's backs should check what's holding them up. Because when those people leave, the whole thing collapses. Veronica built Lumina on my formulations, on my operational knowledge, on my relationships with manufacturers. And when she pushed me out, she lost all of it. She just didn't realize it until the bill came due. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated or pushed aside, I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever watched someone destroy themselves trying to take credit for your work? Tell me your story. And if you want more stories like this, stories about people who learned that karma is just consequences with better timing, hit that subscribe button. More coming soon. Until next time, remember, the person you push out might be the only one who knows where the bodies are buried. Or in Veronica's case, where the contracts are hidden.